The telltale stain on the ceramic mug was a muted rose, not the vibrant crimson Myra Lennox occasionally favored, but that natural hue she swore by, the one that clung stubbornly to everything. I stood in our meticulously organized kitchen, the mug's warmth a stark contrast to the chill seeping into my own heart. Myra wasn't home. Minutes earlier, her text had flashed, just parked, be up in a few. It made no sense. This morning, she declared a full day of remote work, a mountain of spreadsheets awaiting her attention. Yet here I was, staring at a half-finished cup of freshly brewed coffee, while a musky, peppery, undeniably expensive cologne, definitely not mine, danced subtly in the air. What if everything you believed was a carefully constructed lie? I drifted through the living room, a silent sentinel searching for clues. Her phone charger still nested in its outlet. A solitary amethyst earring glittered on the rug. The decorative pillows, usually symmetrical, were askew, as if tossed aside in haste. But it was only as I neared the staircase that the faint, almost imperceptible click of the back door reached me. I didn't surge forward. I didn't shout. I just held my breath and I waited. A minute later, the front door swung open. Myra entered, her movements of forced nonchalance. Her sleek, dark hair was artfully disheveled, her lip gloss conspicuously absent. She wore a faded gray sweatshirt, one I hadn't seen in weeks, a relic from quieter nights before the unspoken distance between us grew into a chasm. Her eyes found me instantly, and she froze, her hand still resting on the doorknob. My smile was a cold, sharp blade. It spoke volumes without uttering a single word. "You're home early," she offered, her voice light, too light. The performance was already a failure. I lifted the lipstick-marked mug. "I thought you were working from home today." She blinked once, twice. "Oh, I was, but—" I stepped out for a quick coffee run. I countered, raising her own mug higher. From our kitchen, a flicker, almost imperceptible, crossed her features. She began to walk towards me, her usual tactic. "You're overthinking again, Talon," she murmured, reaching for my cheek, the familiar gesture designed to silence dissent. And that's when the words, like stones, left my lips. "I'd kiss you, but I don't want to taste your boyfriend." She stopped dead in her tracks, mid-step, as if struck by an invisible force. There was no laughter, no indignant protest, no casual insult. Only wide, horrified eyes and a frantic pulse thrumming visibly in her neck. This changed my life in 30 seconds. Then, "I don't know what you think you heard," she began, her voice cracking, betraying her. She stumbled backward, bumping against the edge of the console table. Her hand trembled as it darted for her phone, a desperate reach to text him, to delete, or both. I didn't stop her. The sheer panic etched on her face revealed more than any unlocked device ever could. That night, she vanished upstairs with the pretext of needing a shower. I didn't follow. I simply collapsed onto the living room sofa, the heavy scent of that other man's cologne still clinging to the air, a silent storm refusing to dissipate. No tears, no raised voice, just a vacant stare at the wall, my fingers gripping the cool ceramic mug as if it held all the answers. In a grim way it did. The lipstick on it was fresh, vibrant, but it hadn't touched her lips in weeks. And I wasn't the one she'd been sharing coffee with. I slept on the couch, or pretended to. Every time my eyes closed, an unwanted montage played. Myra with someone else, laughing, whispering secrets, kissing. Not me, but him. By morning, she was already composed, her dark hair still damp, a fragile, artificial smile plastered on her face, denying the seismic shift. "I'm heading to the co-working space today," she announced, a sudden, unfamiliar need for an office she'd never mentioned. I nodded, a phantom of agreement. Sure. The moment her footsteps faded, I moved. Beneath the television, in a drawer we rarely touched, lay the box of our home security system. She believed I had deactivated it months ago, after a spat about privacy. I hadn't. I'd simply relocated the app to a hidden folder on my phone, letting the subject die. I pulled up the footage from the back door. Timestamp, 1:38 a.m. There he was, not fully in frame, but undeniably tall, self-assured, in a dark jacket. His hand rested with unnerving familiarity on her lower back as she escorted him out. A swift, undeniable kiss, not a casual peck, but a see you soon promise. Then a quick glance back into the house, like a thief checking for witnesses. I felt no rage, only a vast, aching emptiness. I downloaded the clip, securing it in 3 separate locations, then stared at the paused image on my laptop. Her hand on his chest, his arrogant smirk. My entire marriage condensed into a few grainy seconds of night vision. 95% of people miss this crucial detail. That evening, I held my tongue. Not yet. I needed more. The full story. Who was he? How long had this insidious betrayal festered? What other lies had she woven? This wasn't just about an affair. I wanted the entire blueprint of her deceit. My investigation began with her car. She never locked it, claiming a fear of losing her keys. I waited until her familiar shower ritual began, then slipped into the garage. Tucked beneath the passenger seat, a crumpled receipt from the Gilded Spoon, a trendy downtown bistro I'd never set foot in, one of those places charging a fortune for artisanal toast. 2 entrees, a dessert, a single, expensive cocktail. The date? The very same night she claimed to be working late on invoices. On the reverse, hastily scrawled, "Call me Blake, smiley face." I stood under the dim garage light, holding the physical embodiment of her deception. Blake? Who names her child Blake? Suddenly, the mysterious cologne, the nervous glances, the phantom co-working space. It all clicked in a horrifying place. And I knew precisely my next move. The receipt, in my hand, felt heavier than its paperweight. It confirmed this was no fleeting mistake, no solitary lapse. She was dating him, flirting over cocktails, laughing between courses. She sat across from this Blake Sterling while I reheated leftovers, wondering if my paranoia was just getting the best of me. The final, bitter twist, she'd charged it to our joint account, and I'd missed it because she always logged in to check transactions before I could. A pattern I now realized, born of calculated habit. The next day, I became a phantom. Quiet, intensely focused, bordering on obsessive. I meticulously sifted through her digital calendar, cross-referenced timestamps on her social media photos, even triangulated the restaurant receipt time against her phone's location history, a feature she, in her arrogance, had never disabled. Every data point screamed the same truth. Blake wasn't a casual fling. He was a fixture. I even unearthed a blurry group photo from a birthday dinner weeks prior. Myra had cropped it expertly, but I found the original on a friend's social media feed. There he was, seated beside her, his hand resting casually on her thigh. I made a dinner reservation for 2 at the Gilded Spoon for the following evening, under the name Myra Lennox. I used her name deliberately, a psychological experiment. When I arrived, I simply stated I was early. The hostess smiled politely. Of course, she's a favorite here, and led me to a discreet corner table. I sat, sipping water, my heart hammering a chaotic rhythm against my ribs, as if I were about to commit a grand larceny. And then I saw him. Blake Sterling. Tall, radiating smug self-importance. Clad in a leather jacket he likely believed still conferred a certain mystique. He walked in alone, scanned the room, and his gaze snagged on me. He froze. I raised my glass slightly. He hesitated, then, slowly, uncertainly, made his way to my table. "You're not Myra," he stated, confusion clouding his features. "I'm her husband," I replied, my voice disturbingly calm. "You must be Blake. I've heard so much about you." The color drained from his face. "Look, man, I didn't know." "Save it." I cut him off, sliding the crumpled receipt across the table. "You knew. You signed this. You wrote your name on it like a teenager, trying to impress a girl who still lies to her husband about working overtime." He sank into the chair opposite me, uninvited, and launched into a clumsy defense. "It wasn't serious. Myra said we were separated. Just dinner." I let him talk, allowed him to dig his own grave with every pathetic word. My voice never rose. No scene was made. I simply watched him fumble, equivocate, and deflate in real time. Then I delivered the final blow. "See, Blake," I leaned forward slightly, "you didn't just wreck a marriage. You did it in a house with cameras, one of which caught you sneaking out the back door at 1:38 this morning." He blinked, stunned. "And here's the part you might actually care about," I added, pulling out my phone. "You work for Sterling and Partners Accounting, don't you? My cousin sits on their board. I already forwarded him the footage. He found it very interesting." That silenced him completely. I stood, left a $20 bill for the water I hadn't truly tasted, and walked out without another word. My hands trembled slightly, but my heart felt clearer, sharper than it had in months. When I arrived home, Myra was engrossed in a mindless dating show on the living room screen. She muted it, offering a practiced smile as if nothing had transpired. "Hey babe, how was your day?" I returned her smile, a mirror image of her own deception. "Oh, interesting. I ran into someone who knows you pretty well." Her face faltered just a fraction of an inch. Unnoticeable to anyone else, but I saw it. She knew. The house felt colder that night, as if the very walls absorbed the terrible knowledge I carried. Myra played the role of normalcy with chilling precision. Too calm, too polite. She never inquired about my whereabouts, and I offered no details. It was as if we were both tiptoeing around a shattered reality, pretending the broken glass wasn't crunching underfoot. She poured herself a glass of wine, settled beside me, and made polite small talk about her productive day, as if her affair hadn't just been served a warning shot. But the more she acted normal, the more I realized her lack of panic stemmed from ignorance, not belief. She had no idea how much I knew, and that, I understood, was my ultimate leverage. So I leaned into the silence, letting it swell. I waited until she eventually drifted to sleep on the couch, wine glass still half full, the TV's flickering light dancing across her serene face. Then, I took her laptop upstairs. I wasn't expecting a trove of easily accessible evidence. She was careful, smarter than I'd given her credit for. But then I remembered an old shared folder of a relic from when we used to freelance together, exchanging invoices and drafts. She'd stopped mentioning it about a year ago, claiming she'd adopted a new system. I never thought about it again until now. It took me a tense 20 minutes to guess her password. She hadn't changed it. At first, the folder seemed empty, just blank documents and a few dated PDFs from her copywriting projects. But then a barely visible subfolder, cunningly named with a blank space, caught my eye. Opening it felt like a visceral punch to the gut. Screenshots of intimate messages, hushed voice memos, several blurry selfies with Blake. But it wasn't just the raw evidence that twisted the knife. It was the timeline. The oldest file dated back nearly 9 months. 9 months. I had still been planning our anniversary trip, filled with foolish hope. She had already been sleeping with him for weeks. The texts were worse than any visual. Reading them was like plunging my hand in a broken glass, fully aware of the impending bleed. She mocked me, branded me clingy, slow, confessed to Blake how trapped by responsibility she felt. There was even a message where she joked about my Friday lunch ritual. Thinking it was a sweet gesture, I'd packed her a carefully prepared sandwich. She'd sent him a photo of it, captioned, "He tries so hard it's pathetic." That, more than anything, broke me. I sat there in the oppressive dark, staring at the screen, while she slept soundly one floor below, a faint trail of drool escaping her lips, oblivious to the tectonic shifts beneath her world. I imagined waking her, thrusting the screen in her face, demanding answers, screaming until my throat was raw. But instead, I did something else. I selected the entire folder, compressed it, and emailed it to myself with a stark subject line: "Truth for later." Because I grasped a crucial realization. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not out of fear, but because she was still actively lying. And if she believed me clueless, she would continue to slip to reveal more. I needed to witness just how deep this rabbit hole truly went. So, I closed the laptop, returning it to its exact position, and descended the stairs. I pressed a soft kiss to her forehead as she feigned sleep, and whispered, "You're going to tell me everything, eventually." She stirred faintly, but remained unresponsive. The next morning, she moved with the studied grace of someone acutely aware of being observed. Her smile was softer than usual, her voice overly sweet, every gesture meticulously rehearsed. She poured us coffee, offered me the larger slice of toast as if it were a profound peace offering, and brushed a kiss against my cheek, the dutiful wife. But her eyes, though, never truly met mine. They hovered, cautious, calculating, uncertain of my knowledge of what I might have seen. "I'll be at the co-working space again today," she announced casually, pulling on that familiar gray blazer she donned to project an air of professional gravitas. "They've just opened a new lounge area. Super quiet. I nodded, sipped my coffee, and didn't flinch. Sound nice. I watched her leave at precisely 9:04 a.m. I allowed 10 minutes to pass before grabbing my keys and following. I maintained several car lengths, meticulous at every traffic light, moving like a ghost. She didn't head downtown. She didn't even steer towards the commercial district brimming with co-working spaces. Instead, she turned left at an intersection leading into the leafy suburbs, toward a neighborhood I hadn't visited in years. She parked in front of a tan duplex, ivy clinging gracefully to its front steps. I kept my distance, pulling over near a construction zone, feigning absorption in paperwork. I watched her walk up the path and ring the doorbell. It opened almost instantly, before she could even knock a second time. Blake Sterling, shirtless, a confident smile playing on his lips, clearly expecting her. She stepped inside as if it were her own home, and then I waited. I sat in that car for over an hour, a hard knot tightening in my throat, my fists clenched, battling to maintain my composure while my wife laughed and lounged in another man's house. I pictured her words, how she was likely telling him I was still utterly clueless, how she had once again gotten away with it. But this time I was prepared. As I sat there seething, I pulled out my phone and opened a folder I had emailed myself the night before. I began listening to the audio messages. Most were innocent in tone, sweet nothings, inside jokes, those soft whispers she no longer shared with me. But one message stopped me cold. Her voice, shaky, exhilarated. I thought about telling him, but he'd fall apart. Talon can't even handle silence. Imagine if I told him I've been seeing you this long. He'd probably write me a letter. She laughed. He laughed back. Let him. What's he going to do? Cry into his spreadsheets. That one burned with a particular sting because I had written her letters. Stupid little notes I used to tuck into her lunchbox. One on her pillow the day after our last argument. She always said she kept them. I believed her. Here's what no one tells you about betrayal. At 10:38 a.m., she emerged, her hair more tousled than before, her makeup freshly touched up in a way only someone who had just been intimate would bother with. I ducked low behind the dashboard. She didn't see me. She climbed in her car, her fingers already flying across her phone, texting him, undoubtedly, before pulling away, a faint hum escaping her lips as if she hadn't just torched a marriage. I didn't go home. I didn't follow her. I drove straight to a print shop, printed every photo, every message, every email from that folder. I meticulously placed them into a thick envelope and wrote her name across the front in my most precise hand. Then I went home, packed a small duffel bag, and left it by the door. That evening, I placed the envelope squarely on her nightstand without a single word. She didn't notice it at first. We barely spoke. I feigned exhaustion, scrolling through my phone while she droned on about her productive day. She didn't ask about mine, which confirmed her blissful ignorance of my morning expedition. That illusion of control emboldened her, and she overcompensated with manufactured kindness. She made dinner, offered me dessert, even suggested we watch one of our old shows, the one she used to dismiss as too slow. I politely declined. Around 11:40 p.m., I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. I heard her soft footsteps ascending the stairs. I knew her routine. Shower, phone check, and then, inevitably, the envelope. Sure enough, just past midnight, the faint creak of our bedroom floorboards reached me. Then a soft thump. Silence. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if she might ignore it, toss it aside, pretend it didn't exist. But then came the unmistakable rustle of paper, followed by a stillness so profound I could feel its weight from downstairs. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Then footsteps. Soft at first, then quickening, almost frantic. She descended the stairs barefoot, her face utterly drained of color, clutching the open envelope as if it were radioactive. She halted at the edge of the living room, a question mark suspended in her posture, unsure how to begin. I slowly sat up, my gaze pointedly not meeting hers. Talon, she started, her voice thin and brittle. I can explain. I nodded slowly. I'd love to hear it. But just so you know, I've heard everything. I've seen it all. And the best part? You still lied today. I didn't lie. She began, a desperate defense. Co-working space. I cut her off, my voice even. You mean Blake's living room? That did it. Her knees buckled slightly, and she sank onto the sofa across from me, clutching a throw pillow as if it might shield her from the inevitable storm. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she whispered, tears beginning to form. "It started as a mistake. I swear I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked, my voice still unnervingly calm. "After our 10-year anniversary? Or maybe after your next brunch date in his bed?" She flinched. Her eyes welled up, but I felt no pity. Nothing. I was beyond pain, beyond rage. I only wanted the truth, stark and unfiltered, stripped of her usual justifications. "You said I was pathetic," I added quietly. "You laughed at the sandwiches, the notes, the effort, all of it." She looked down, shame burning her cheeks. "Maybe we're just cornered." "I didn't mean it like that," she mumbled. "I was venting." "He asked." "No," I interrupted again. "He didn't ask. You offered. You volunteered pieces of me to make yourself feel interesting." And then she cracked. Real tears, not the performative kind, streamed down her face. She sobbed into her hands, reciting the familiar litany. She missed feeling wanted. She felt invisible. I had pulled away years ago. All the usual lines. I offered no response. I let her sit in the silence she herself had created. Finally, she looked up, her face streaked with tears, and asked the inevitable question. "So what now?" I stood, walked to the door, and picked up the small duffel bag I'd packed earlier. "I'm giving you space," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "You always said you wanted that." Her lips trembled. "Are you leaving me?" "No," I replied, the truth echoing hollowly. "You left me a long time ago. I'm just finally catching up." Then I walked out. The first night away felt like an absence, not a relief. No weight lifted, no sudden clarity, just the quiet hum of a sterile hotel room and the haunting realization that I had finally done the very thing I'd feared for years. I had walked away. I kept expecting my phone to flicker to life. An apology. A meltdown. A desperate plea for reconciliation. But the screen remained stubbornly black. Hours bled into a full day, then 2, and the silence was deafening. I wasn't accustomed to it. Myra always had a reaction, a retort, a guilt trip, a flimsy excuse for everything. But now that I had called her bluff, she was silent. I began to wonder if she wasn't coming after me at all. Perhaps she was truly done. Perhaps Blake had been the plan all along, and she was simply waiting for the opportune moment to sever ties. Ready to learn the shocking truth? But late on the second night, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number, but a known sender. One text, just 3 words. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for nearly a minute before my fingers typed a reply. "Only if you're ready to be honest." She called immediately. No hesitation. Her voice was raw, exhausted, profoundly altered. I read everything again, she confessed. Every message I wrote, every photo, I saw myself through your eyes. And I hated what I saw. I remained silent, allowing her to continue. "I wasn't just cheating," she said, her voice cracking. "I was escaping. From you, from me, from the life we built, because I didn't want to admit I felt like I didn't deserve it anymore." That caught me off guard. It was the first time she hadn't blamed me. She wasn't excusing it. She wasn't spinning it. She was simply exposed. "I sabotaged us because I was scared you'd eventually see me the way I really am," she added. "And I couldn't handle that." I remained quiet, partly because I didn't trust myself to speak without unraveling, and partly because, for the very first time, she sounded like she wasn't lying. "I'm not asking for anything," she continued, her voice breaking completely. "I just wanted you to know that you were right. I didn't mock you. I betrayed you. I destroyed something that was better than I ever appreciated. And if you never come back, I understand. But I needed you to know I was wrong about everything." A long, heavy silence settled between us. Then I finally asked the question that had gnawed at me since the beginning. "Was there ever a moment when you looked at me and wanted to fix it before it got this bad?" She inhaled sharply. "Yes," she whispered. "The day you left that note in my coat pocket, the one that said, 'I still believe in us.'" I cried in the parking lot, and then I drove straight to Blake's. It felt like being hit twice by the same bullet. "You had a choice," I said, my voice low and steady. "And you made it." "I know," she conceded. "And if that means I have to live with losing you, I will. I just wanted you to hear me say it before you disappear completely." I ended the call without saying goodbye. I didn't do it to hurt her. I simply knew that anything I said in that moment would dilute the truth she had finally admitted. And a part of me needed her to sit in the silence this time. Not out of anger, but because silence had always been my prison in this marriage. And now it was hers. 3 weeks drifted by. I heard nothing more from her after that call. No texts, no missed calls, not even a casual just checking a message. And I needed that profound silence more than I had realized. I stayed with my cousin during those weeks, someone who didn't bombard me with questions, simply handed me a spare key and the quiet comfort of his guest room. Each morning, I found myself breathing a little easier. Each night, I thought a little less about what she might be doing or whether Blake had fully taken my place. Then, one afternoon, I returned from a walk to find a package waiting by the door of my cousin's apartment. No postage, no sender's name, just a white envelope taped shut, my name written across it in her distinctive handwriting, the kind she used to use on birthday cards. Inside was a letter, 3 pages, handwritten. No dramatic introduction, no begging, just thoughts. Her thoughts. She wrote that she had left Blake. Not for me, she clarified, but for herself. She described looking around his apartment one night and realizing she had nothing in common with the person she had become around him. She said she had started therapy, said she had finally told her mother the truth, said she was learning how to sit with herself in the silence instead of desperately trying to fill it with other people's attention. But the last paragraph stopped me cold. She wrote, "I know I lost you. I don't expect a second chance, but if you ever think there's a version of us worth rebuilding, even if it looks completely different, I'd show up for it this time. The right way, with the truth first." I folded the letter, sat on the porch steps, and let the late afternoon sun warm my face for the first time in what felt like months. I had no idea what our future held. Perhaps we would try again. Perhaps we would never speak again. But in that moment, a profound realization washed over me. She was finally telling the truth, and I finally had peace. That was more than I ever thought I'd get. So I went inside, brewed myself a fresh cup of coffee, and simply sat with it. Not waiting, not grieving, just being. For the first time in a very long time, I felt like myself again.